Now we're ready to review the audit we've done by looking at the end screen, and at this point we'll enter some information maybe on the diagnosis codes and look at the different options that we'll have here. We've come to the end screen for this encounter, and we can see up in the right corner we've got history level, exam, and decision making. This shows each of the levels that we've determined there. We've got our code suggestion 99214, and over here we've got a place to compare it, comparison. The provider E&M, the reviewer E&M. The reviewer E&M has come up because that's based on what we've audited. The provider E&M you will enter over on this area where you would say, well, he billed a 215 and I've got a 214 supported, and that means that we're varying by a +1, meaning he's coding one level higher than what I've audited. If we said, oh, but he billed a 213, you can see it's a -1. That's one level lower than what I've audited, so we'll give him credit there. Well, let's look at this. This is a 99214. Counting the beans come out with a 99214. But you know, as an auditor, I don't know that everything he did was medically necessary. I'm making that judgment call here because, again, remember, medical necessity is the overarching criterion to determine the level of service, regardless of the documentation elements. Well, maybe all of that comprehensive history really wasn't medically necessary, and we're prepared to make that judgment call. We have a medical necessity button here that we can click on, and it asks us the questions. Does the presenting problem support the level of service? Well, you know, this really didn't seem to be a 214. Maybe we felt this was more like a 213. And we would say no. And then the next question, do you want to manually override the reviewer E&M based on the presenting problem? If I say yes, I do, it gives me the option to say, well, you know, this should have been a 213. Even though the beans counted out to a 214, it should have been a 213. It allows me to make that judgment. And notice it will then say 99213 DC, letting us know that we downcoded it. We changed that code. If I had said no here, do I want to manually override? Then my next question would be, do you want to base the reviewed E&M on the medical decision making? Remember, the documentation guidelines say history, exam, decision making, 2 of the 3 key components determine your level of service for an established patient. Some consultants teach that, and I've heard that some Medicare carriers also imply this, is that one of those 2 components has to be medical decision making. That's not in the documentation guidelines anywhere. However, some people are of that opinion. This allows you to have the software say that as well. Do you want to base the E&M on the medical decision making? Yes. And then in that case, it's going to base it and force it such that one of your 2 key components is medical decision making. If you don't want to use this medical necessity, that's fine. You don't have to use it. It's an option there. Some choose to use it, some are not comfortable with it. We've got an option to put in our note macros here. The option for note macros is in the patient screen, the history screen, and then again in the end screen that you can enter it there. So you can enter your macros here. Maybe this visit appeared to be dominated by counseling and coordination of care, and you have the time documented. So if the physician documented that he spent, let's say, 30 minutes face-to-face with a patient, and 20 minutes of that was counseling, then our level of service is going to be based on that documentation. We also have the option to note our diagnoses, and the current ICD-9 codes are already preloaded into the system here, and you can enter what the physician coded. Let's say he gave us 465.9. Let's say he gave us 465.9, and he gave us 401.9, and we agree. We can just click agree, and it's going to bring that, automatically populate those fields. Or let's say we don't agree. Let's say that he didn't say acute URI, he just said cough. We can enter that. And it's going to track this as a diagnosis coding error, and we can have that information on our reports as well. If he chose the right codes, he just put them in the wrong order, then we can indicate there was a diagnosis sequencing issue. Didn't have them in the right order, whatever that error was. We also have a place to enter any procedures. Let's say they gave an injection as well. So let's say we coded 90772. And then we could say, yes, it was. Yes, that was appropriately documented. Or perhaps he did a joint injection, and that's appropriately documented. We have a place here with the procedures for all the different procedure modifiers that might be appropriate. We also have modifiers over for our A&M. So let's say the physician used modifier 25. We can, by entering it or not entering it, we can say that whether or not it was supported. All of this information is then going to appear on our report for this encounter. Now, one of the things I wanted to point out with you at the end screen is we had chosen the highest level of exam we could. Well, let's go back and say, as far as exam, we're going to say, no, let's go with our 97 guidelines. And notice that we've ended up with the 97 guidelines there. Notice it tells us the currently selected exam is not the highest exam coded. Do you want to change to the highest coded exam? So the software has tracked that you audited under both, and remember the CMS guidelines are that you are a CMS auditor is to audit under both and give credit under whichever the physician does better under, or whichever that patient encounter is coded better under. This is reminding you, hey, you had a better exam. Do you want to use that? And I can say yes or no. If I say yes, it's going to change it. Or if I say no, it's going to force it into the 97 that I've got audited. And you can see that's what appears there on the end screen then. So we've completely audited this encounter here, and then we can go on and we can look at the various reports that we would have on that basis. We're going to finish that encounter, and we're going to save it and print it, or we're not going to print it. Whatever is appropriate in the situation that you're in.